All right, hey guys. Um, so back with another video here on logic over emotion. Forgive me for an extended amount of time of not making a video. Um, I've been in the process of a relocation. I am now in my new office space. It's a little echoey. There's nothing in here but a little temporary desk and uh, my computer. I actually went and picked up my work computer and have to wait for my actual desk to get in with the furniture before I set all that stuff up and get the rest of my man cave kind of situated. So we have some plans for that. Okay, so what I wanted to talk about in this video, something that's obviously been in the news quite a bit lately, the whole defund the police thing. I'm also forgiving my appearance. I know I need a haircut. I think I found a barber. I'm going to be talking to him this upcoming week. Let's see if I can, get myself looking back presentable again. But anyway, so the defund the police thing. Um, there are so many problems with this. I don't even know where to begin. Um, this kind of reminds me of like people who go into fitness with the goal of losing weight and looking better, but not actually being healthy. So they don't make it like a lifestyle choice. And they try to shortcut themselves to, getting the physique they want, only to find out that even if you acquire it and that's your sole purpose for doing it, it's not nearly as enjoyable. The journey is part of it. Actually living healthy is part of it. Feeling better day to day is part of it, not just looking the part. And I think that's what's happening here. It's kind of like people don't want to do what it will take to actually get change, right? They don't want to spend the long days in the gym. They don't want to count their calories. They don't want to do what they have to do. Screaming defund the police and rioting and all this other, that's easy. It's easy to act on emotion because you feel like you're getting some type of satisfaction immediately. But the satisfaction you're getting isn't going to be lasting satisfaction. It isn't going to be the same satisfaction as if you were actually to get police, reformation accomplished. You're not doing any of those things. All you're essentially doing are making a large group of Americans quite upset with the way you're acting. And what is interesting about this, if you think about 2016 and how Donald Trump won that election, it was the same game plan by the Democrats. We're just going to yell racism at the top of our lungs. We'll see if it sticks. And it didn't. And what are they doing here? They're essentially doing the same thing. All the pandering to black people. If you have two brain cells to rub together, uh, you view it more as an insult. Like when I see a white person shining a black person's shoes, I'm just like, what are you doing? This isn't a reaction to something that has been. This is an overreaction to something that just doesn't even exist. It's like how have we gotten to the point where we blame an individual or a group of people for something they had nothing to do with? That that logic makes zero sense to me because that would be the equivalent of me saying, okay, well, since African Americans or black people commit so much more crime per capita than white people, that I should be necessarily perceived as more dangerous. Now, me personally, I don't have anything against profiling. I don't have anything against stereotyping, as long as you're not letting it cloud your judgment of that person being an individual. For instance, if a cop is patrolling a dangerous neighborhood, naturally speaking, he's going to be on higher alert when in that neighborhood. That is a form of profiling because what creates the higher alert the people. So he is assuming that the people around him are more dangerous, and he would be right for believing that if that's the case. Now, does that mean that he gets out of his car and goes and beats up the 80-year-old lady walking across the street? Well, of course not. She's a part of that profile, but not something that he would actually act on based on the profile. And so we have to be clear about that. So this whole police mess and the idea that people aren't going to be profiled this is the thing I say. Before we get to talks of even equal treatment, which is the talk. Well, the talk of equal outcome doesn't even need to be had because it's just something that it can't happen. But equal treatment, how do we get equal treatment under the law if we don't treat the law the same as other groups of people, right? Like that's just a given. That's something that people have to understand. You can't be perceived as more dangerous, and that it reminds me of a Harold and Kumar reference. I think it was in the one where they're trying to find. Is it the one where they're trying to find White Castle? I don't know, but anyway, so there's a group of black people in the hood playing basketball. I think they're kind of lost. They're driving this bright like yellow Mustang, trying to. I can't remember where they were going. But yeah, they had a bunch of black people in the street, and so they drive up and they stop. Not wanting to drive through the crowd of black people. And so they show like I can't think of the guy's name, but he jumps up, he gets a rebound, and he looks really angry and mean. And the guy puts the car in reverse and hits a fire hydrant. And he turns to the guy. He's like, what are you doing?" And he goes, "Dude," he's like, "Dude, I'm not scared of them because they're black. I'm scared of them because they're scary, right?" And like people need to understand that. I think people think that you know because people are black, that's the reason you're doing something. No, I'm the same way. If I'm in a certain place, um, I look out for my stuff a little bit better. I look out for myself a little bit better. I look out for my family a little bit better. Here recently, I've just relocated to a place that's like 1% um, black population. I think it's like 3% minority. Um, and, it's in the suburbs, nice neighborhood, newer neighborhood. Um, it's just a really good community. Um, I've had zero fear of my wife and kids going out for a walk. Um, Everybody's so nice. It's a very different feel from when you're in a place where crime is a little bit higher, right? Um, and so that plays into how the police actually interact with people. Now, the common sense approach to this would be that defunding the police would mean more crime. So all the people who are following this, right, who are taking up this mantra and saying let's defund the police, the people who are pushing this the hardest, you have to stop and ask yourself, what do they have to lose from defunding the police, right? Um, Probably a lot less than the average person in the like. Do you think that these people live in the inner cities? Do you think they live in high crime places? Um, because I guarantee you, if they did, they would not want to see less police force. The people who want less police are the people who are into. Uh, they're either the true racist, right? The people who are out to destroy the black community, or criminals. Like, what would a law abiding person, why would they dislike the police? Um, I mean, let's just be fair. And like I said, we watch all of these videos that have been edited. Um, and like I said, now you'll never hear about the white person getting killed by the police because it doesn't fit the narrative. Even though more white people are killed, uh, if you look at all the statistics, uh, you know, discussing interaction with cops from a minority standpoint, all of those numbers have been moving in the positive. As far as murders and excessive force. All of those things have been going in the right direction. And here we are in 2020, acting like there's some epidemic regarding the police force. Well, there's just not. Um, if you're not a criminal, you're not doing stuff you're not supposed to do, you're not gonna die. Like, give me a person, right, who wasn't a criminal, who wasn't in a criminal act. Um, I mean, just a random black person walking down the street, and like it doesn't happen today. And so every time a black person is murdered by the cops, they find some way to glorify this person, even though half of them live a life of crime. Now, I don't know about you. I don't like people that live a life of crime. Obviously, the one of the newest in the news, which by this time is kind of old, but George Floyd, he wasn't a good person. And I'm sorry, as a person who has a wife and two young children, if someone were to tell me that a man did a home invasion, held a gun to a pregnant woman's stomach, um, me and that gentleman wouldn't get along too well. And frankly speaking, I could care less what happens to someone like that. Um, like we can all say this, we can all say that, but my thing is okay. So what if he does that again and this time he pulls the trigger, right? Um, is it at that point that I'm supposed to say, okay, let justice be served? So sometimes you just have to use common sense and see things coming. Um, but the sad part about this whole situation is if we defund the police, more stuff like that will happen. Now, where I'm at, is it going to be a problem? Probably not. Crime is extremely low. That's not to say that it can't go up. Um, but where you're going to feel the most pain are in the inner cities, and you're actually starting to see and feel some of that pain, um, because there are uh, areas of the country where the police are just giving up. It's like at some point you have to say to yourself, um, okay, I'm just not wanted, and if they don't want me to do my job and to keep them safe, let's let them figure it out. And that's the funny part, right? Is you can count. I think last year, unarmed black men, you could count on your hands. You can count on your hands how many there were. Now, how many situations have been prevented or avoided because you were able to dial 911 and call the cops, right? How many situations don't happen because they know that someone will come if you call the cops? I, I just, I try to find a way to make sense of this, but I don't. So something that's taken like 0.0001%, some crazy low number of black lives, we're going to defund an entire department because of that. But then we don't look at the other side of the coin and see what we're losing by doing that. Because look, I can start by saying you're losing a lot more. It's common sense. If you had 9 criminals, uh, unarmed criminals killed by the police, are you telling me that you won't suffer more loss by not having the police? I mean, people have to be able to cipher out the bad apples and understand that that we'll never reach perfection in any profession. All right, there will always be fatalities with doctors. Um, Attorneys will always fail. Um, some mechanic somewhere is going to mess something up on your car. It's a reality. And in no other profession do we expect perfection, but somehow with policing, where you have even more so in other professions, you have emotion as being a big part of that. You're reliant on someone to interact with you in a way where you don't have to, react with deadly force. When you have someone up under the knife and you're a doctor, is basically you and your team trying to figure that out. It's not like the person is awake telling you how to operate. Um, you know, I just don't understand where they think we're going to get to, or what we're going to accomplish. At this point, Trump only needs to just sit back. Sit back. Um, Joe Biden and the Democrats, this narrative that they're pushing so hard that have caused so much destruction. Uh, they're doing it to themselves. Donald Trump doesn't have to do a thing to win. He just has to be smart, continue to be supportive. I would say the one thing that he needs to go ahead and do is he needs to just, squash all of this defund the police nonsense. He needs to, like this zone in Seattle and all this stuff that's going on, just crush it right now. I think the optics, I think that things like that are being avoided because of the optics. But what Donald Trump and other Republican administration need to understand is that just because we don't scream the loudest doesn't mean that we aren't the greater in number. And I'm willing to bet any day of the week that 90% of people, though they may have skewed beliefs and values, 90% of people are generally good people who just want to live, who want to be left alone, who want to leave others alone, who actually want to go out of their way to help others. Um, the Democrats aren't going to get those people. They're going to get these radical people who don't even want to have actual arguments, who don't want to get to actual solutions. They want to get those people just, all up in their emotions, right? But there's a lot of people like me, and you see it emerging more on YouTube, and I can see it when I have debates on LinkedIn. There's more people coming around to the reality of, what a life versus the perception that the Democrats are trying to push. And I think those people are going to um, cause Trump to win quite easily. Because the funny part is, the Democrats at this point are so radical. They're not gaining any new support. You're not having a bunch of people wake up and say, "Oh my goodness, um, this has been happening. Let me jump on this." No, you're. It's just like they used to accuse Trump speaking to the base, speaking to his base. Well, that's what you're doing, but you're doing it in even a worse way because you're losing part of your base. You What you have to understand is that there were a lot of black business owners. There are a lot of good black people. And you used to be able to sell the idea that you were helping blacks, but now it's so evident with the way that you guys are flip flopping. You know how COVID was so bad, and in reality, we all know that you guys just wanted to shut the economy down. But COVID was so bad, you couldn't do this, you couldn't do that. If you went out to protest COVID, everyone had a problem with you. If you went out to protest the businesses being closed, but then George Floyd, a lifetime criminal, gets murdered by a ignorant cop, and um, everything just turns upside down. Um, and the what the annoying part too, and I want to add this in, are how they charge the other cops. Frankly speaking, I would have hated to be in their shoes. I heard two of them were relatively new on the police force, and then you had a veteran here who was, instructing them to do stuff. That makes me think back to some early days in my IT career, right? Where things happened, but because I was new on the job, it didn't it didn't roll downhill to me necessarily, and that's how it should have been. Um, because if you're gonna use that train of thought to say those cops should have stepped in, then any civilian should have stepped. Like, what would have been the difference? Any civilian should have stepped in because hell, you guys were about even in experience with some of these cops, with some of these new cops, and so you're like I said, you're going to charge them with aiding and abetting. I mean, it's just in these guys' eyes, they join the force, they're trying to do something right, and because of a knucklehead police, not only does George Floyd lose his life, the cop is charged with felony murder, basically, or should be. And then you have three more cops, two of which I know were new, who basically just had their lives destroyed. Um, I can't help but think in any profession, I say you're a doctor, you're an attorney, whatever you are, and something catastrophic happens early on in your career while you're clearly under someone else's control and you're allowed to take the fall for it. Where would society be today if that was the premise on which we handled people new to whatever they're doing? Especially since they say that you learn from your mistakes. What if you're not allowed to make mistakes? Um, like I said, we've gotten to the point of political correctness where we don't care who we destroy, how we destroy them. We don't care about censorship. We don't care about having the real conversations. Anytime I talk to a Black Lives Matter um, person, they never want to have the debate of whether or not this is actual systemic racism. It's almost like it's like they skip a step and the assumption is already made that it exists. So we should only be talking about how to stop it. And my problem is, as an engineer, you have to make sure you have a problem to begin with. Nine unarmed deaths last year does not constitute as a problem to me, considering there are 44 million Black Americans in the country. Also, that 7,000 of the homicides are done by other Black men. You want me to be worried about nine, and on top of that, you want me to be worried about the defunding the police when they're one of the only defenses that some people have in the inner city, only defense, and you want to take that away from them. You know, it's kind of like I feel like the police in the fact that uh, we're trying to help people take a clear, logical view of this so that we can actually have change. Because see, people like me actually want to make the Black community better, but we're written off as Uncle Toms and this and that simply because we tend to think a little differently. And we understand that jumping up and down, flailing your arms is not going to change anything. We understand that you have to have methodical steps. You have to think things through. We cannot even give, our Black people cannot even give white people a concise picture of what they actually want. It's a moving target. You're never going to appease this mob because mobs cannot be appeased. Um, it's sad to say at this point, all BLM is doing is being more divisive, which, of course, most people know by now is their main agenda. Because what the irony of their group, right, is if they happen to solve the problem of systemic racism, they no longer have a job, right? You no longer have a job. So they're actually incentivized to keep finding things to nitpick over and claim that there's systemic racism. But anyway, this video has gone on long enough, so I will say this. I like that Pence came out uh, I think it was the first rally since the coronavirus that Trump had. Pence came out and he said, "We're not going to defund the police. Not now, not ever." I liked his strength when he came out and said it. I think we need to make that loud and clear that we support our men and women in blue. Um, and like I said, I've been pulled over by the police for doing stupid stuff. At one time, I feel like I've been pulled over by the police for something that wasn't my fault. But I've also heard the world um, isn't a fair place. And so, you know what I did? I sucked it up. I paid the little citation, went on about my way, because to hold every single person to perfection is ignorantly a bad stance to take. You have to understand people are going to make mistakes. You have to understand that you may be collateral damage of that mistake. And so my goal is not perfection. My goal is to minimize my interaction with the police. And if I have an interaction with the police, I'm going to make sure I don't make his day any worse than it already is. because like I said, we asked them to deal with the worst of the worst in our society. They're not everything isn't, you know, traffic stops and oh, you were 5 over the speed limit, here's a citation, good day. um, I know that's what people want to believe, um, but like I said, you go police some of the inner cities and be put in positions that you don't want to be put into. And for those that say it's just your job, that's ignorant too. Just because you do a job where you want to help people doesn't mean that job is not going to affect you and your mentality day to day. And I think as individual people, we can help cops. Um, you know, I make sure to always thank them when I see them. I, you know, tell them to be safe out there. There's small words go a long way. Instead of, you know, looking at them like they're from another planet or something, treat them with respect. And so I support Trump and Pence. I support not defunding the police. And like I said, I support getting the black community to a place that really allows them to start growing and benefiting. And this stupid narrative that their systemic racism is just not true, and it's only hurting them. So thanks for watching. Make sure you comment, like, subscribe, drop some comments down below. Let's get a dialogue going. If you disagree with me, that's fine. Let's talk about it. That's the point in this. So with that one, you guys have a good day. I'm about to start my beautiful Sunday at 8:30. So yeah, you guys take care. Talk to you later.